So, the title of my talk this morning is I, Me, and Mine with a colon intuition. So I'm going to tie those topics together. And some of my thinking on this topic is new, so just being developed. So in Buddhism, and this is a quote from Wikipedia. In Buddhism, the concept of I, me, and mine are considered to be part of the ego, which is considered an illusion that causes suffering. And Buddhist teachings emphasize the idea of non-self or emptiness. So that's what they have to say. And I'm going to go on to say I think the topic is so much more complicated than that quote implies. Now, really, I think I spoke to this topic through another lens last week, maybe last Wednesday, when I referenced an article that was written in the 1970s by Jack Engler. The title being, You Have to Be a Somebody Before You Can Become a Nobody. But becoming a nobody, I went on to say, is a misnomer. But I used to think it was the Buddhist goal, and I think many people either consciously or more subtly or unconsciously think it is a Buddhist goal. I used to think I should eradicate myself, that I, me, and mine, I should rid myself of that. Um, and so I actually think it wasn't a great idea for me or most people, and I don't think that's what Buddhism is actually teaching. I'm sure other people might argue that point. But then what is that I, me, and mine thing? How does that relate to intuition? And I think it relates a lot. Um, and so a couple of days ago, actually it was Sunday, um, I was meditating, and while I was meditating, I felt like this really strong pressure, like you need to interrupt this meditation, you need to send this text. Now, that happens sometimes, and sometimes I follow it and sometimes I don't. But this friend of mine, she's a Sangha sister here, actually was just about days away from, in fact, it might be even today, moving from the home she'd lived in for decades, raised her children in, who are no longer children, but have children of their own, and now was moving into a continuing care community. That's a big deal. And I felt that. I felt the pressure and the big deal of it. And so I did decide to interrupt my meditation and send that text because the pressure was so strong in me to do so. And then I realized that's actually often how my intuition works. It's kind of perceived as a pressure, an internal pressure to do or say something. And then I know that it was intuition when I get feedback that tells me that. And in fact, in this case, she immediately wrote a text back to me saying, Thank you, the timing was perfect. Thank you so much for saying that then. So I went back to my meditation and I reflected upon intuition because that is what I thought was going on there. So in the suttas, the Buddha's there's lots of psychic powers that are attributed to the Buddha in a few suttas. And it's said that this psychic powers, which is kind of related to intuition, right, is what came from his deep samadhi, his deep capacity for inner collectedness and focused attention. They usually use the word concentration. Not my favorite word. I prefer inner collectedness and focused attention. And I believe, and I've observed that long-term meditators develop this capacity for greater intuition, greater psychic awareness, but I don't think it's special. And that's kind of a big deal that it's seen as so special. But I just think it comes along with a kind of sensitivity that is sort of developed in the stillness and the inwardness and the collectedness of meditation. And of course, intuition is developed in many other ways. I'm not suggesting this is the way. Now, intuition generally has a good rap. Some people might even view it as a superpower, and they might perceive people as special. But I don't think so. I don't think people who are intuitive are special. I think they're more sensitive or more tuned in. And I think this is a mixed bag. So they can pick up on other people's thoughts, feelings, stuff from other people. So it's really another way of talking about dependent arising. This is another way of saying that we're not separate, so that we're not isolated eyes, but we impact each other in countless ways. And also, the flip side of that, others impact us in countless ways. Some of these are obvious, observable, though I think most of them fly under the radar of our awareness. We don't really know what's impacting us. We don't really know who we're impacting, again, until we get some feedback. Now, another side of this is that many of our intuitions or our, psychic awareness, whatever you want to call it, are not accurate. When I was young, I used to go to psychics. Not a lot, but sometimes. And the first one I went to, I remember she told me that that psychics are never accurate all the time, and she gave me some percentage of how often, but no doubt that percentage is different at different times. So, but it did make a strong impression on me. I really learned right at the front end, don't believe all of what, this information. Then later on, I went to a very well-renowned psychic, and she had been uncannily right on about so much of what she predicted. I guess that's why she had a good reputation. And some of what she predicted in readings was very helpful until she was dead wrong. And I mean this quite literally. She told me that my niece, who was missing, was going to come to live with me. But actually, at that time when the reading was, my niece was already dead. So that was that really skewed me away from listening to other people, but more turned me towards listening to myself. So, as I think about, well, actually Sunday in my meditation, when I was thinking about intuition, when my mind, after after those texts turned to intuition, the words came up in my meditation, my mind stream is not my own. Now, this seems good in the sense of, I'm interconnected, I'm not isolated, but there's another side to it. Um, Maybe I don't want my mind stream colored by some of what other people have, such as their meanness, their greed, their delusions. I really don't want it to come in. I'm not sure I get to open the door on some and slam the door on others. I think it's more inevitable that some of that other stuff is going to come in. If you're open, if you're sensitive, you're going to pick up stuff. Maybe actually it's good to know when there's meanness, greed, and delusion. That's another talk. So if that door is open and then we're left navigating some potentially potent forces. Now, I'm not saying that others' experience inevitably become I, me, and mine. That's not what I'm saying, but more that maybe we pick them up and feel them in ways, well, I'll say for myself, actually. I'm going to make an I statement. Maybe I pick them up in ways I haven't been aware of and haven't really thought about before last Sunday. And I think I have to live with them. Um, and maybe even at times they're going to feel like I'm me and mine, but they're not. But they're not. So intuition really is useful. I really like it, and it can be powerful. Again, it's not so special. And those who have it, as though there are those who have it and those who have not. So actually, that's a wrong sentence right there. Those who are more aware of it and have developed that capacity are not so special, but it's powerful, and we best use it for good. We best use it in wholesome and, most importantly, ethical ways. It's not ours, but what we do with it is our responsibility. So those are my morning thoughts on intuition. Um, I did actually write this Dharma talk at the last minute this morning because I felt like I had to talk about this, not something else. Maybe it was an intuition, who knows? But that ends the talk there. And we will meditate in our usual way. We'll meditate for our 30 minutes in silence. And